when the explosion. For the latest from the capital, I spoke to Daniel O'Malley. He's the deputy head of delegation for the International Committee of the Red Cross. He's in charge of assistance operations. So I asked him first about some of the members of his team, the ICRC team, who lost their lives in Saturday's bomb attack.
Now we have 5 confirmed, and there's still one person who's missing, presumably dead, and about 10 injured. Now, all of the colleagues were volunteers of the Somali Red Crescent Society, whose building was just next to where the explosion took place, and they were basically killed following the impact. We have still, as I say, a number of injured. Most of them have been discharged, and really is quite a difficult time. I mean, it's been quite a shock. And we're just trying to get the pieces together and try to see how we can follow suit.
Of course, because the reason those people were there was to help. But, of course, you have to work on, don't you? What are you doing to help those civilians who are injured or who have lost people?
Well, one thing I wanted to highlight is that immediately after the explosion, even if the compound of the Somali Red Crescent was directly affected, we still had what we call a first action team of first aiders who were able to provide first aid on the spot immediately after the explosion, making sure that transporting some of the injured to the hospital, collecting some of the bodies. That is something which I think should be highlighted. Even amidst the whole crisis, they were able to be the first responders there and react. Now, after that, the ICRC, we've been immediately supporting the hospitals, the main hospitals, through the provision of weapon wounded kits to cater for about 100 injured, and then dressing kits materials to about 4 or 5 hospitals. We have a surgical team in place. It was actually by chance it was here in Mogadishu because we're doing a training session. So they've been able to provide some support. Right now they're in Kaysani Hospital following up on some patients. We're also supporting the local authorities in terms of the provision of body bags for a dignified management of the dead.
Is any of this, and it's horrible and it's a tragedy, is any of this going to deter the ICRC from the work it's doing?
No, certainly not. We know the environment we're working in. Obviously, we take all the measures possible to limit the exposure to any kind of incident. We shouldn't be going through this. But in any case, it's at times like these that the work of the ICRC is even more justified. We've been working in Somalia for the past 30-odd years. And we feel quite comfortable here. We don't feel that we are a direct target. And in that sense, we feel that we're accepted by all parties in Somalia, which is allow us to work in Somalia, and especially in certain areas where maybe other humanitarian organizations have no access or very limited access. So we will continue with our operations. And right now, we're also concentrating in being able to support the SRCS to continue operating. We've actually set up a provisional office for the SRCS in our own compound, and we'll try to be up on our feet as soon as possible.
And this is a tragedy, it is a setback, but have things been improving? Of course, Somalia doesn't make the headlines in the way that it used to. Have you perceived that life is getting better despite this kind of outrage?
It's difficult to say. I think that certainly colleagues of ours who've been here back in the 90s will certainly say that certain things have improved, especially in the urban areas. In the rural areas, it's still pretty much the same, and the overall humanitarian needs, I would say, still more than justify the presence of organizations like the ICRC. This year, we have to remember that we're amidst a food crisis, which has prompted up our operations here in Somalia. And we are witnessing cyclical crises, whether man-made or environmental crisis or climatic crisis, which still needs support from our side. So in a way, there has been an improvement, but the humanitarian needs in a country like Somalia are still quite considerable.
That's Daniel O'Malley, the Deputy Head of Delegation for the International Committee of the Red Cross, Assistance Operations in Somalia.